Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Rundown. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And well, today is Monday Fun Day.
I stop what you're doing, cause I'm about to ruin the image of me that you're used to. I look money, a king bee making honey, see? Deep state, I hope you're ready for me. Now gather round, I'm the new sheriff in town. All my people rise up and stand your ground. Now drink up all the Diet Coke you got on your shelf. So just let me introduce myself. My name is Trump D. I like my mashed potatoes lumpy. Fake news, oh how I like to punk thee. That little sniper on the slow tin. He took a shot but he missed me. I don't fall, y'all, I'm like the ever ready bunny. Still going strong and spunky. So put on your big boy pants. Come on, let's do the dance.
The Trumpy dance is your chance to do the Trump.
Come on, do the Trumpty Trump. Come on and do the Trumpty Trump. Check me out, y'all. We do the Trumpty Trump. Just watch me do the Trumpty Trump. Do you know what I'm doing? We do the Trumpty Trump. Come on, everybody do the Trumpty Trump. It's time to do the Trumpty Trump. Yeah, my favorite dish.
I love that song. I love that song. In fact, I look forward to Mondays just so that I can play that song for you guys. It's fun. You know, I'll tell you, it's so earlier today I had a little bit of an exchange with a Trump hater, with someone who's suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. And it's amazing how people are so, what's the word I'm looking for? They are so energized and fervent in their hatred of Donald Trump that they're like, well, you just can't handle the facts. You ignoring all of the facts, and I can't believe how you just sycophantically follow him. And I'm like, here's the thing. Anyone who knows me, I mean, really knows me or has paid any attention, knows that I criticize Donald Trump when I think he's done wrong, and I applaud him when I believe that he does right. I support I support the policies more than I support the man, and I've got my issues with Donald Trump. I think as I think most reasonable people do. What is amazing to me though is when you share facts, they change the subject. They don't really want to talk about facts, right? They don't need facts to support their hatred of him. They are just so blinded by their hatred of Donald Trump that they're not interested in facts. They really aren't. And what's funny though is that they can't see it. They absolutely, positively refuse to see it. Anyway, but and by the way, so one of the reasons why I'll post the memes. One is because, like I said, having a debate with them is idiotic because their position is so idiotic, it deserves to be mocked. It does. Many of the positions of the left are so out of the mainstream. They're so idiotic. They are such common nonsense that they deserve to be mocked. And to be quite honest, it's fun to mock them. It really is. It really is fun to mock them. And that's the reason why we do it. Anyway, that 2 cents. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and get into the program today. By the way, once again, if you are watching this program 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, on Twitter, on Rumble, if you're watching us on Facebook, the show is live right now. So go ahead and comment. Let us know where you're watching the program from. Let us know what you think about what I have to say. And like I said before, you don't have to agree. I thrive on people not agreeing. Just know this, that if you disagree and you are clearly wrong, just know that we will mock you.
Oh wow, is that a mockingbird?
Man, is that a mockingbird? Is that a mockingbird?
Yeah. Yes, we will mock you like a mockingbird. And we're going to have a good time because you know what? Ultimately, here's the thing. We're going to talk about news. My goal is to hopefully inform you, but also to entertain you. So we're gonna try to have fun. So while I provide you the information, we're gonna try and have some fun with it. And the fun, by the way, just so you know, the fun don't come for free, and that's because we need someone to help pay the bills around her. So to that end, let's start off the show with a quick shout out to our sponsors. We're gonna start with Hitman Industries. They sell rifle and pistol caliber barrels for your firearm, for your rifle, at any length, right? any pistol or rifle caliber available. If you've purchased an AR in the last few years, there's a good chance you already have one of their barrels. And I'm sure that if you have, I'm willing to bet that you love it. So why not get another one? Why not, if you're looking to do a brand new build, or maybe you're just looking to rebarrel your old rifle, just go to hitmanindustries.net. Then we've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all level of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Ronald Reagan once referred to CRA as the conscience of the Republican Party. Why don't you find out why? Just go to cragop.org. That's cragop.org. Check them out today. And then we've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market today. You will find them at Hog Holsters. That's HAWG Holsters, helping Americans wear guns. Now, if you go there, you go to their website, make sure you use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces, one word, just like it is right up there. You're going to get a discount on us. And then finally, if you're looking for tactical gear, cold weather gear, hot weather gear, wet weather gear, it may be especially you're looking to order for a group, you need to go to uscombatgear.com. They have a huge selection of gear and stuff. They have competitive prices, especially group sales, and they have the best customer service available on the market. Check them out today, uscombatgear.com, where you can get all things tactical except the gun. All right, now let's get into it, shall we? You've probably heard about this story, and chances are you haven't heard about it from the mainstream media, and there's a reason why, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But there is an incident that is taking place right now, and it's actually, to be quite honest, it's actually a little scary because, excuse me, the thing that's frustrating about this particular story is that you know this stuff is going on, right? You know that, how can I put this? There is whenever the media has an incident where there is a crime, right? Race seems to matter. If it is a black on black crime, you don't hear anything about it. If it is a uh, uh, black on white crime, you don't hear anything about it. If it's a white on white crime, you don't hear anything about it. But if it's a white on black crime, it's all over the news. Now, especially when we're talking about major cities, and the president is talking about sending troops into places like Chicago or in some of our major cities where crime is rampant. You're seeing a lot of pushback. Well, there's a particular incident that took place back on the 22nd. So we're talking, this was a couple of weeks ago, that took place. And the sad part about this whole story, first of all, is that an innocent person has been killed. Let's start with that. Woman was stabbed by a person who had been in and out of, I mean, we're talking, had been on and off. What's the word I'm looking for? Had been in, this was a person who had been dealing with the law multiple, you know what? I'm messing the story up. Anyway, let me just let you. Oh, go ahead. Will Kane did a section on this, and I'll let him go ahead and kind of share with you and give you all the details, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Chilling video lighting up social media this weekend. It is disturbing to watch. It shows 23-year-old Irina Zarutska. She's a refugee from Ukraine, boarding Charlotte, North Carolina's light rail train just after 9:45 p.m. on August 22nd. She's sitting, scrolling on her phone. A man in a red hoodie is sitting behind her. After 4 minutes, he casually and unpredictably pulls out a knife and stabs her 3 times. She was dead at the scene. And if that's not horrifying enough, right after, he roams around the train car, waiting by the doors as passengers look on, leaving behind him a trail of blood. The suspect, DeCarlos Brown Jr., is a career criminal with 14 arrests, at least 14 arrests. And those convictions, they date back more than a decade, including arrests for felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats. After serving 5 years for a 2014 robbery, he was back on the street. 5 months later, in 2020, he was arrested for assaulting his sister. Again, quickly back on the street. This past January, North Carolina Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes granted Brown release after his arrest for misuse of the 911 system. Based upon the release, a written promise that he would return for his court hearing. That case, by the way, pending when he boarded the light rail last month. Also stunning, support for these kinds of criminals. Look at this. It's a now removed GoFundMe page for the suspect. It reads, quote, "While what happened on the Blue Line was a tragedy, what we mustn't lose sight of is the fact that DeCarlos Brown Jr. was failed categorically by the judicial system and the mental health services of North Carolina, and as such is not entirely to blame for what happened. Mental health has become a catch-all for this country to excuse the greatest of our sins." And it sounds a lot like what we heard from Charlotte's mayor, Vi Lyles. She wrote, "We will never arrest our way out of issues such as homelessness and mental health. Mental health disease is just that, a disease like any other that needs to be treated with the same compassion, diligence, and commitment as cancer or heart disease." By comparing mental health to cancer, she makes DeCarlos Brown the victim in this horrible murder. By blaming the system, she absolves responsibility for DeCarlos Brown. And there was no responsibility for the city of Chicago, at least their leaders, who I guess are hard work at investigating. They treated themselves to a break from a safety briefing on the incident to eat cake. So why are we just hearing about this now, this horrific crime? It's been since August 22nd, but it hits your radar, my radar, just this past weekend in September. Well, it's because of one of the biggest lies of omission, silence from the media. Let's explain over at The Wall. If you search right now.
I'm not going to go ahead and get it. I'm not going to. Some of the stuff you already talked about. But the point he goes on to talk about is the fact that, um, that when it comes to crimes, and once again, the left seems to be obsessed with race when it comes to crime, but they only seem to be obsessed one way: when a white person attacks a black person. But the truth is that far more blacks are attacked by blacks. They didn't point. Will Cain didn't point that out. But also, there's approximately 3 times as many incidents where whites are attacked by blacks than blacks attacked by whites. In fact, it happens about 3 times 3 times more likely for it to happen. But in this particular case, what's funny is that if you dare point that out, but not just that, if you dare talk about this, well, you're part of the problem. And this is a piece by John Nolte over at Breitbart, where he's talking about far left Axios, and Axios by no stretch is not the most extreme of this, but says here far left Axios upset MAGA exposed Charlotte train stabbing to the public. And he goes on to point out down here where Axios says this says MAGA influencers, which basically means anyone on the right, because they don't want Republicans to feel bad. They just want MAGA people to feel bad. And basically anybody who supports Donald Trump or says a positive thing or doesn't share their disdain for Donald Trump must be MAGA. Anyway, MAGA influencers are drawing repeated attention to violent attacks to elevate the issue of urban crime and accuse mainstream media of undercovering shocking cases. The big picture: the rising number of surveillance cameras in public spaces, including on Charlotte's light rail, has become a big accelerant in these cases. The video is easily shared or leaked and can instantly pollinate across social media. A visual counterpoint to statistics showing crime decreases. Now, once again, and we've talked about this last week, crime had spiked in 2023. They had a 1-year decrease. 1 year. 1 year. It went down from a high. So in other words, if you go back as far as 2021, well, it's still higher than it was, or 2022, it's higher than it was in 2022. It's higher than it was in 21. It's higher than it was in 2020. There's more crime now than there was before COVID. We know this. And so they're like, well, we have a 1 year decrease. Well, yeah, that in part is because you decriminalized a lot of crimes. And then you also got places like Washington, D.C., where they are cooking the books. And, that's already been reported. We already know that is happening. But in cases like this, now, keep in mind, this is a guy who was released. He was literally has multiple arrests, has served time for multiple crimes, is known to have mental health issues, and is known to be violent to others. Yet this guy was out roaming the streets. Why? Can someone explain this to me? The reason why this is an issue, and to me, it's less. The news story is about the fact there is a news story here in the fact that the media is covering it up, or at least not talking about it, because ultimately this guy is a poster child for the Democrats' version of a criminal justice system. It's one where, as Will Cain just pointed out, the criminal is the victim. Because here's the thing: if he has a mental health issue, he clearly had the ability to get meds, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't have let him out. I mean, if he was put in and he was dealt with and he was given the medication that he needed to handle his mental health issues, or maybe he just shouldn't have been on the streets because he is clearly a danger to others. Clearly he's a danger to others. I mean, 2 violent crimes already that we know of. So clearly this guy was a danger to others. Why was he out on the streets? Possibly because you treated him, you put him on meds, and then they put him on meds, and they felt like it would be okay for him to be out in society. Well, that must mean that he stopped taking his meds, and bam, here he is. A young woman is dead, and because he happened to be black and she happened to be white, nobody has anything to say about it. That's the problem, because it doesn't fit a narrative. Once again, if she had been black and he had been white, we couldn't get this out of the news. We would not be able to get this out of the news. There's absolutely, positively no way. Everyone would know her name. They would know his name. They would know who he is. But they don't. They're not. So we don't. Anyway, that's what's so funny. And this is, by the way, it's not just this. It's not just this story. It's whenever liberal policies fail, right? Or whenever liberal politicians fail, the story is always Republicans noticed, Republicans said something. Republicans it's never what they did, it's never their failure. It's never their corruption, it's never their crimes, it's never their bad policies. It's always the fact that Republicans noticed. Because we said something, they can now demonize us. And I'm sitting up here trying to figure out, well, what's going on? Because here's the thing. Ultimately, the reason why this is an issue, and this is where I will disagree with many of the right pundits on the right, the race doesn't matter, because in the end, here's the thing. Most of these people who are committing crimes, most people commit crimes amongst their own. They mostly victimize their own. Meaning, when I say their own, I mean the biggest perpetrator of crimes against, the biggest victim group of black people is black people. It's true. The biggest victim of crimes by white people is white people. Same with Asians. Same with indigenous people. Same with the Native Americans. Same with East Indians. It on and on and on. All the data shows that. So race isn't it's not the issue. It only became an issue because of how they cover it. That's why it's an issue. That's why you make an issue of it with the media. But ultimately, for each of these crimes that we talk about, there are victims and the victims' families. And what we need to be doing is considering how we do what we can to make sure that those numbers don't grow. If this guy had been locked up, this young lady would still be alive. And it wasn't like they didn't have a reason to deal with him. But, and by the way, the last crime, as he was pointing out, misuse of 911. Yeah, he was. Now, once again, it'd be one thing if this were the first thing the dude had ever done. If he had never been violent, if he had never committed another crime, would it be okay for him to be out on the streets? I could understand why he would be. I could understand why he would be out with no bail. But the fact that dude is a known violent criminal, known They knew this, and they let him run the streets anyway. See, at a certain point, it's not about trying to rehabilitate you. At a certain point, you've made a decision that you're not going to play well with others, that you're going to do harm to people. At that point, you need to be removed from society. I don't know, and that's to protect society from you. I know I hear what you're saying, but at a certain point, you have to say how many young ladies, how many young men, how many people have to get robbed, how many have to get raped, how many have to get murdered before we finally start to say, you know what, your society privileges have been revoked. And I'm not talking about innocent people. I'm not talking about just locking people up or grabbing people. I'm talking about you are a known habitual criminal, and that's what things like three. That's why things like three strikes were made. That's why laws like that passed. And I get that in some cases the process of three strikes has been abused. I get that, but I would say that the abuse of three strikes is the exception, not the rule. I would say that most of the people who are getting locked up under three strikes have demonstrated that their willingness to commit serious crimes against their fellow citizens multiple times has demonstrated that they absolutely have no idea, they have no interest in playing well with others. They have no interest in being a functional part of society except to do it harm, and therefore they should be removed from society. I think in cases where you have someone with mental health issues, that clearly demonstrates that they are either not interested or not willing to do what it takes in order to be functioning part of society without causing harm to others. Then I think I would say the same exact thing. And I know that sounds cruel, but at a certain point, uh, we have a duty to protect the innocent. Not at a certain point, we have a duty to protect the innocent. And unfortunately, in this particular case, the only person that was protected is the guy who killed the young lady, and they're still trying to protect him. And that is sad to say the least, because it cost this young lady her life. Anyway. All right, moving right along. Supreme Court rules that ICE can actually do its job. That's right. The Supreme Court came back and said, you know what? Yeah, ICE, yeah, you guys get to actually do your job, which is deporting people who are in the country illegally. This is being reported. I want to make it a point to pull a story here from CNN. It says here Supreme Court allows Trump to continue roving ICE patrols in California. The Supreme Court on Monday backed President Donald Trump's push to allow immigration enforcement officials to continue what critics describe as roving patrols in Southern California that lower courts said likely violated the Fourth Amendment. The court did not offer an explanation for its decision, which came over a sharp dissent from three liberal justices. At issue were a series of incidents in which masked and heavily armed immigration and customs enforcement agents pulled aside people who identify as Latino, including some U.S. citizens, around Los Angeles to interrogate them about their immigration status. Lower courts found that ICE likely had not established the reasonable suspicion required to justify those stops. The decision deals with seven counties in Southern California, but it has landed during a broader crackdown of immigration by the Trump administration, and officials are likely to read it as a tacit approval of similar practices elsewhere. Quote, this is a win for the safety of Californians and the rule of law, said Tricia McLaughlin, Department of Homeland Security spokesperson. DHS law enforcement will not be slowed down and will continue to arrest and remove murderers, rapists, gang members, and other criminal illegal aliens. The U.S. District Court in July ordered the Department of Homeland Security security to discontinue the practice if the stops were based largely on a person's apparent ethnicity, language, or their presence in a particular location, such as farm or a bus stop. The U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals largely upheld that decision, which applied only to 7 California counties. But the Supreme Court disagreed with that approach. Though the court did not provide any analysis explaining its decision, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a member of the conservative wing, they never say the left or the left wing or the liberal wing, but they never say that about the liberal justices. Anyway, who sided with Trump, wrote in a concurrence that the factors the agents were considering, quote, taken together can constitute at least reasonable suspicion of illegal presence in the United States. Quote, to be clear, apparent ethnicity alone cannot furnish reasonable suspicion under this court's case law regarding immigration stops. However, it can be a relevant factor when considering along with other salient factors, Kavanaugh wrote. And I think that's the point. In other words, no, you cannot do it because they are of a certain ethnicity. But if they happen to be of a certain ethnicity and they happen to be at a place where people who are in the country illegally are known to work or show up for work or request work, and oh, by the way, when you show up, they happen to run, that's reasonable suspicion. All of that creates reasonable suspicion. Now, if it just happens, they just happen to be Latino, yeah, no, you can't. But that's not what's saying. Even in cases like, and Mike talked about stop, talk, and frisk, right? Even in cases like that, um, what was funny is that they weren't just like picking random people and just randomly, okay, I'm just gonna pick this person out because of their color. No, they're in a neighborhood where they know crime is going on, where they know people who are criminals happen to be, or have criminals happen to be. Not everyone there is a criminal, but there's a disproportionate number of people committing crimes who are in that area. They're going to be there. And they're going to ask people questions. Can they stop and ask them just because they're black? No. If they happen to be in a place where criminals are known to hang out, uh, then yeah. I mean, that's the funny part. I don't understand why this. Here's the thing. It goes back to this. They think that, and the left seems to think that anytime something disproportionately happens, anytime there's not like equal numbers of this as they are proportioned in society, well, then it must be racism. No, how about it's just uh, the overwhelming majority of people who've come into the country illegally that we know of recently have come through our southern border. And by the way, just so you know, we'll be talking about this in another one. There was a raid on a Hyundai plant down in Georgia. By the way, red state. Most of the people that were arrested were not Latino. Uh, But I guess that doesn't matter to that. That doesn't matter to the left. So anyway, all I know is that this is a win. And basically, because here's the thing, what ICE is doing is their job. And it basically says that they are allowed to do their job. And if you want to know why you didn't get an explanation, the lower court justices, it's because you should have known better, you dumbasses. That's pretty much it. You should have known better. Anyway, moving right along. This is an interesting one. In Israel, or in Jerusalem, there was an incident that took place. This, by the way, being reported by our friends over at Bearing Arms. It says here, armed citizens help stop terrorist attack at Jerusalem bus stop. Let's look into it. A pair of gunmen reportedly from the West Bank opened fire at a bus stop on the outskirts of Jerusalem on Monday, killing 6 people and wounding 6 others before they were shot and killed by a soldier and several armed citizens who were at the scene when the attack took place. In a press release issued a few hours after the first reports of the attack, Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms chairman Alan Gottlieb, said he wouldn't be surprised if most mainstream media outlets downplay or quickly move on from the armed citizens' response. Quote, because it does not conform to the narrative of civilian disarmament and because it does not confirm that the best way to respond to an immediate and unavoidable threat of grave bodily harm or death is to fight back with whatever degree of force is necessary, end quote, including, by the way, using guns to stop a threat and protect innocent lives. Just a few days ago, three-judge panel in the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals reversed a lower court decision that found Illinois' gun ban on public transportation violated the Second Amendment rights of four individual plaintiffs, declaring that the state, quote, may temporarily disarm its citizens as they travel in crowded and confined metal tubes, unlike anything the founders envisioned. So, in other words, what he's pointing out here is now this clearly was an incident where if this had been here, well, in Illinois, if this had been in places like California, where a lot of these places that are considered quote unquote sensitive places, uh, those armed citizens wouldn't have been there, or at least they would have been there. They just wouldn't have been armed. And how many more people would have been killed? How many more people would have died as a result of that? If they had been if they had not been in Jerusalem, where citizens are allowed to be armed, and that's the thing where we're at here. It's like, look, the what's the saying? The law enforcement is often minutes away when seconds matter. And That's not me blaming law enforcement. It's just law enforcement cops are not omnipresent. They're not. They're not gods. They can't be everywhere. But you know what? If I am prepared to defend myself, I can be my own first responder. Just like I'm expected to be my own first responder if I need medical attention. If something's going on with me, if I know my health and I have the tools, like I have a first aid kit or something like that I can use to help take care of myself or one of my family members until like an ambulance arrives or until I can get to the doctor. I'm not trying to replace the doctor. I'm not trying to replace the ambulance drivers. But I can provide that first line of defense and protection and aid. And the same thing here. In this particular case, we don't know, only God knows how many more people would have been shot had there not been armed citizens there. Anyway, hats off to those armed citizens. Next story here. This says here, hundreds caught in raid doing jobs Americans would do. You probably heard about this Hyundai plant, right? This also being reported by CNN because I wanted you to see how they are couching it. It says here nearly 500 workers were taken in a raid at Hyundai's battery plant in a quiet Georgia town. The silence is deafening. You see that like something horrible has been done. If you drove to Elabelle, Georgia, on State Route 204, past a few double wides, a couple of churches, and a Dollar General, you'd never guess a massive automobile complex sits just a few miles away. The town is small, unincorporated, and best known for canoeing on the Ogeechee River. I'm just messing it up. Ogeechee River, or teeing off at Black Creek Golf Club. Until last week, its biggest claim to fame was being chosen as the site of Hyundai's first fully electrified vehicle and battery manufacturing campus in the United States, a project state leaders promised would bring 8,500 jobs and transform the rural economy. The narrative cracked when the largest immigration raid of President Trump's second term, nearly 500 federal, state, and local officers descended on the Hyundai LG battery plant construction site and arrested 475 people. Agents with Homeland Security investigations said the majority were Korean nationals, though others were from different countries. Some officials said had crossed into the United States, in the U.S. unlawfully. Others had overstayed visas. Still others were on visa waivers, allowing entry for tourism or business, but permit but do not permit employment. As officers, masked, carrying rifles, fanned out across the sprawling site, they ordered construction workers to line up against walls, demanded dates of birth and social security numbers, and began sorting who would be cleared to leave and who would be loaded into buses bound for Folkestone Ice Processing Center, more than 100 miles away. Workers described the scene as, quote, a war zone. One hid in an air duct to avoid capture. Others tried to flee into a sewage pond. Agents used a boat to fish them out, and prosecutors later allege one man tried to flip the vessel. By the end of the day, hundreds were gone. Construction at the 2,900-acre site stopped cold. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things here. Number one, clearly there were a bunch of people here that were not in the country legally. Number two, they were not picking vegetables or picking crops of any kind. They were not maids. These were people who were doing construction jobs, right? These were people who were building a plant that basically, yeah, it's going to provide jobs, but these are people who are doing jobs that clearly Americans would do. And they were not here legally. Many of them either didn't have the proper visas, or they had overstayed their visas, or they just came into the country illegally. And the overwhelming majority of them, by the way, were not Latino. They were South Korean. Now, as I understand it, plans to build it, to do this construction is now going to be on hold, probably until 2026. But here's the thing, folks. Do it the right way. And in the end, that's all we're talking about here. We're talking about doing it the right way. And once again, I said it before and I'll say it again. These are jobs that Americans would do, but here's the thing. They won't do it as cheaply as someone who's in the country illegally. They won't work in risky working conditions the way someone who is here illegally is willing to do. The truth is that these folks want to, the people who are hiring them, the people who are arguing that we need these people to do these jobs, are people who want to exploit workers. They want to exploit the fact that these are desperate people who want to come to the United States. And they want to take the fact that they're in the country illegally and they want to exploit them. They want to exploit that by paying them less, by having them work in worse working conditions than you would if they were American citizens. Because see, if you were paying fair market value, you wouldn't have a problem filling those jobs. You would have American citizens willing to do those jobs. Now, I saw someone arguing on Fox News on the Will Cain show. She was saying, well, these are highly technical jobs. So you're telling me you couldn't find anybody? What steps did you take to try and find someone in the United States who could do these construction jobs? And I'm willing to bet you didn't do any. Because once again, you had your cheap labor force. It kind of reminds me of that whole, people, what reminds me of Democrats, right? They're the same people that argued, why, if we free the slaves, who's going to pick our cotton? That was their argument. Well, now who's going to wash our cars? Who's going to take care of my child? Who's going to do my lawn? That's what they're arguing now. Like, we need to get these people, we need to keep these people here so that they can do these menial tasks for us. That is their argument. All right, folks. Well, that now brings us to our parting shots. Parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, no spaces. Get your hog holster today. All right, we're going to start here. You might have heard the story about the lady who took the baseball from the little kid. I don't know if you watched that video. It was really friggin' sad. This dad goes down an aisle. It was at a Marlins game. Goes down, ball's hit. It's a home run. Dad goes over, picks up the ball, gives it to his son. And then the lady goes over and says, well, the ball was it was in front of her, but it was like a row down. And she went over and she bullied him into giving the ball back. Well, Donald Trump deports Philly's Karen to El Salvador prison. I forgot to say, this is from the Babylon Bee, fake news that you can trust. And the funny part is, here is and I'm sorry if this offends some of y'all, but I'm sorry, this is funny. This is an AI video where they do an interview, apparently, of the Karen, and it's hilarious.
Billy, Karen, tell us what was going on with that home run ball.
Our family already lost 2 balls. My son is now my daughter. I was not about to let another one go.
Yeah, that was that was hilarious. No, that was not true, but it was hilarious. Now, here's another one that you want to check out. Another video you want to check out. So this was in Ireland, and there apparently was a pro-Palestinian parade. And if you want to know how the Irish feel about it, well, let's just show you.
Secure Palestine! Secure Palestine of your own! We can secure Palestine of your own! You can secure Palestine of your own! You can secure Palestine! Secure Palestine! Secure Palestine of your own!
They're not shy. They definitely are not shy. You kind of know exactly where they stand on that. And then this last story, also from the Babylon Bee, fake news that you can trust. Democrats condemn stabbing victim for inflating crime numbers. Yeah, that's pretty much how it works. And by the way, just so you know, yes, actually, North Carolina is now a purple state, but particularly the city where the stabbing happened. Another blue mayor. It's a blue city with a blue mayor. Anyway, run by Democrats, which is, why probably I won't say that this happened because they are Democrats. I'll just say that they probably would be doing more to enforce crime there if Democrats were not in charge. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's program. But before we go, we're going to do one last quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got our folks over at Hitman Industries, rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you to purchase at hitmanindustries.net. We got the California Republican Assembly, the conscience of the Republican Party. Check them out at cragop.org. And then you've got the best in concealed carry tactical holsters available on the market at hogholsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com, helping Americans wear guns. And then finally, you've got the place where you can find all things tactical except the gun. That would be uscombatgear.com. And with that, we're going to go ahead and call it a day. We will be back tomorrow on Taco Tuesday. Till then, y'all have fun, stay safe, and we will see you mañana.